My guest today is a wife, a mom, a homesteader, a business owner, and a homeschool mom. And she's pretty much the picture of a homesteader that a lot of people have. She has a lot going on, and our conversation today is talking about someone from the perspective of someone who's doing a lot of things and making it work as well. So we get into good topics here. If you're interested in the large scale homesteading, then this is the episode for you. If you want that life that you see so many people have with multiple animals and being more self-sufficient and sustainable with multiple things going on, then you need to listen to this episode. I also want to mention that she is a mom. So in this episode, we hear some kids in the background, and that's just the way it is. You've heard my grandkids in the background on this podcast. And so I just want you to know that this is real life, and this podcast isn't here to be perfect and have perfect sound. It is here to share information with you, to help you create the homesteading life that you dream about. Before we go into the interview, I want to remind you that the workshop for beginner homesteaders and dreamers promo is ending in just a couple of days. So this is your last chance. If this is the first time you're hearing about it, listen to the end of this podcast episode. This is a two-part series as well. So you'll hear part one today, and then there'll be another part two in a couple of days. So just listen up to the end of this episode and you'll hear all the details. Make sure you use the code at checkout. Also, to start this episode, I have my 20-month-old granddaughter saying hi to you.
Hi.
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 Today I have Julia Wells on the podcast, and surprise, surprise, we met on Clubhouse. I sound like probably like a brand partner when these last few episodes with interviews, because I've met so many amazing people on Clubhouse, but I'm not a partnership. There's no partnership. And in fact, I hardly ever get on Clubhouse anymore, but it came at the perfect time for a lot of us. We were looking for community, and we found it. We found the people that wanted to talk about all these, about raising animals and, growing food. And, we were all interested in this topic. And then a lot of people were actually just had never heard of the things we were talking about. So they were curious, and they were coming in and asking questions because everything was so up in the air in 2020 and 2021. So Julia has a homestead called the Humble Hive Homestead. And it is, I believe it is what a lot of people picture with homesteading, like what the ultimate homestead. You have all these things going on. You're raising so many things for your family and for other people. And her homestead is considered a large scale homestead because of all the things that she's raising and growing on her property. And I going to ask her some questions about her life and how she maintains all of this while being a mom and a wife and a homeschool family. Correct? You're homeschool.
Yeah.
I read that and I was like, I wonder if she still homeschools. So yeah, she homeschools. And so welcome, Julia. I'm so happy to have you here, and I'm excited to get started.
I'm excited to be here. Thank you for having me on your podcast, Mona.
You're welcome. Okay, so can you tell us a little bit about yourself and your background? Like, how long have you been homesteading, and where is the Humble Hive Homestead located?
So I'm originally from New Jersey. I've been in Oklahoma 10 years this year. We started homesteading when we still lived in town, and we live in central Oklahoma. We started when we lived in town. We had illegal chickens. A lot. The gateway critter
Right.
is always chickens, and we realized that we wanted to be more into this lifestyle. So we looked for a couple of years, and we found the area we're in now, which is Wellston, Oklahoma. We're kind of right between Tulsa, Oklahoma City, and Stillwater. It's a really great area. We love it, and so we found our place. And the first couple of years we were out here, we didn't do much, but as our kids got older and as we got more interested, we started adding more things and some God opportunities popped up, and that's kind of how we acquired our cattle. And so that's where we started.
Awesome. That Oklahoma, everybody thinks of the song. I can't get, yeah.
Yeah, I'm not going to sing because I'm not good at it, but yeah.
Neither am I. But yeah, so every time you say Oklahoma, that song comes in my head. But anyway, I know Oklahoma has other things besides that movie and that song.
Yeah.
What is the weather like where you are? Like, what's the climate like?
It's we have all 4 seasons in one day sometimes.
Okay.
So it's very varied. We have some extreme weather. What was it? 2021, we had the coldest temperatures, I think, in 100 years. So we went down -32, which I know if you live in Minnesota or Alaska, that's not much, but that really pushed us to our limits as far as our infrastructure. All of our water froze on our place. I was hauling water from the kitchen sink out to the cattle. We had no hot water for 2 weeks because our tank had frozen. But we get hot summers and really cold winters. Okay. So we get a little bit of everything, and then we get tornadoes thrown in. A little bit about me is I grew up vegetarian or vegan from about age 7 to 22. Okay. Until I met my husband, and he showed me the ways of an over medium poached egg and steak and hamburgers. And so by the time we got married, I was almost completely an omnivore. So he had a background in raising poultry. He had done that in high school. He was part of FFA and really active in that. And so kind of the deal was, he's like, oh, the town we're moving to when we move to Oklahoma is a bird sanctuary, so we can have chickens there. So we started with chickens. I got, some fancy fluffy chickens at the flea market and from the feed store. And so that kind of sparked it. And I had always wanted to have a big garden. So we got a big garden, and we did permaculture. We had all of our shrubs at our house were blueberry bushes. We had rain catchment systems to water all of our plants. We did all that kind of stuff. I think our max, we were at like 15 chickens, and then we had a couple of ducks at one point in time, and we harvest those for meat. And so that's really where it started. And I got pregnant with our second child, and we decided we needed a bigger place. And so we bought our place out here, and I got a mess of chickens. And then we've tried goats. That was not our cup of tea. And then we started raising meat birds with our business partners, Pam and Ed. And we really that was like our jam. So we've done meat birds and turkeys. We do that about every year. And then next was the cows. And that's kind of my project. And then I guess in the past year, last year we got our St. Croix sheep. So we have about 10 sheep. And so we've got a little bit of everything. At some point in time, we've probably had a bat critter you're thinking of at our house. So we've done a little bit of everything, and, we've kind of honed in and figured out what works for our context on our property, what our limits are for how many of each animal we can have, and how to successfully raise them regeneratively.
Okay. That's awesome. Okay. So let's talk about Dexter cattle, because there was actually a time where I was really interested when we were living in California on our 2.5 acres, and I was looking for a milk meat option because I didn't want a large dairy cow or a small dairy cow where their offspring wouldn't be able to be used for meat. So I found out about the Dexter, and we were kind of close to getting them, but I watched somebody else go through it and that particular cow did not make a very good milking cow. She was really struggling, although I know they can, but I imagine it just takes a lot of training to get a Dexter to milk.
Yeah, there's a lot of people that makes milk Dexters. They're a great intro cattle. Coming from somebody who didn't work with cattle at all, had never been around cows, had I started with a full-size cow, I don't think I would be as confident working with cattle as I am now. So they're a great gateway cow. They're a great intro cow if you have no cattle experience. They're a lot of people are off put by the horns, but we haven't really had any major catastrophes with them. But I really enjoy them as a breed. They're docile. And like with any breed, there's milking lines and there's beef lines. And the other thing that I love about Dexters is one of the best of both worlds is a Belfair, which is a Dexter Jersey cross. And that's like, if I was going to do a milk cow, I'd do that.
Okay.
And that's kind of like we've talked about. I'm also an AI tech. So we've talked about breeding one of our Dexter mamas to a Jersey bull via AI to get a Belfair, because that you're going to get that Jersey cream line you want, and you're going to get that higher milk production that you don't get necessarily in a Dexter. There are people that milk, a gallon and a half a milking from a Dexter, but theirs are coming from the milking lines. But they're a really, and we breed for temperament. They're a really docile breed. Our bull is like the best guy ever. I can keep him in with a single hot wire. He doesn't test our fences, and he's just a gentleman. So like I said, if I had started with like an Angus or a Simmental or any like wild beefy breed, I don't think I would have been as great with cattle as I am now, or as confident.
Yeah. And I can see that. Oops. I don't know if you heard that. My thing went off. I can see that. And so explain to the listeners what a Dexter is and why we were talking about the size is different.
Okay, so Dexters are a heritage breed of cattle that come from Ireland. They are smaller framed. They're short. There's two. I mean, they carry a dwarf gene. So there's chondro and non-chondro. Chondro tends to be dwarf, so they've got shorter legs, but they're also just some shorty Dexters that aren't chondro, but they just happen to be low line. So they tend to have a different meat to bone ratio than say a full framed cattle. So you're going to get more meat, more bang for your buck, more or less with Dexter. And they're smaller, so they eat less. They're great mothers, and they're a really hardy animal. I don't hear much about people having to pull calves or anything like that. Sometimes you have a questionable teenage mom, so like a heifer, a first-time mom, she doesn't necessarily take the best care of her baby, and so you maybe have to help her a little bit with that. But a lot of people don't end up with bottle calves from them. They're just they're heritage breed. They come in polled, which is horned. Polled, which is unhorned, and horned, which has horns. They come in dun, black, and red, and they're just like I said, a great starter cow. They are kind of browsy, kind of goaty. They'll eat a lot more than what most cows will eat, and they're just really hardy, heat tolerant, cold tolerant. I love the idea when we were first thinking about cows of getting Highland, but based on Oklahoma weather and our burrs and stuff, it wasn't a good fit. So that's kind of what brought me to Dexter's, and we had friends that had them, and they seemed like it was good for our context here.
That's good. And how big is your herd?
I think we're down to 7.
Okay.
I can't do the math, but we've got like 7 to 8 right now.
Okay. You mentioned earlier that you're an AI tech. Since that word is used in the different contexts nowadays.
I'm an artificial insemination tech.
Okay.
And so that means I took a course to learn how to palpate and help cows get pregnant without a bull. And it was something. We also have pigs. I totally forgot we have pigs. And so I started AIing our sows and our gilt. And I got really interested in it, and I went down a rabbit hole. So I decided well, if we ever get rid of our bull, who's named Max, then I'd love to learn how to AI our girls. So I went to a course here in Oklahoma at Bonanza and did that and learned everything there is to learn about palpating and artificially inseminating a cow or heifer. And so that's my next big journey is getting started on that. But yeah, Um, yeah, it's not artificial intelligence. I confuse people. They're like, "Oh, I didn't know you were into like artificial intelligence." I was like, "Oh no, no, no."
It's immediately what I thought when you started talking, but then I realized, oh no, she means artificial insemination.
Yeah. The other kind of AI tech.
Yeah.
The old-fashioned kind.
The old-fashioned kind. Okay. So you are a regenerative farmer, right?
Yes.
Correct. And so can you explain what that means? That term is kind of thrown around. Some people who are listening probably have never heard of it. Some people are like, I've heard of it, but I'm not sure what it is. So can you explain to our listeners what that means?
We don't do things based on like what we need to do. We do things based on what the land needs us to do. So it's always checking grass and soil health. For us, it's meaning like regenerative, meaning we're leaving things better than what they started. And I didn't really talk a lot about this, but when we bought our place, it hadn't been grazed for maybe 40 years. There might have been some horses on it in those past 40 years. It's covered in weeds, covered in trash. So we didn't really have any large scale critters on it until we were here almost 4 years because we were doing so much trash cleanup. And then we got our fencing.
And how many acres do you have?
We're on 18.
18, okay.
And unfenced acres when we bought it. There was no fencing, no infrastructure to support livestock here, and old fences that wouldn't hold anything. So we had to put a lot of work in, but it's mostly weeds, lots of thistle. Just part of being a regenerative rancher or farmer is like paying attention to what the ground is telling you, what the grass is telling you. Our biggest like accomplishment to date is we rotationally graze throughout the spring, summer, and sometimes fall. But we feed in a winter pen. It's called, what is it called? There's a word for it, but it's left my mind. We do a winter paddock, a sacrifice paddock. And that's where we feed our cattle all winter, fall and winter, and sometimes spring. And so we went from it, our kids called it Rocky Top. And so it was just all sandstone. And we had been feeding winter bales there for 2 years, maybe. And now that is the richest, blackest soil on our entire property. So like, that's like the big example. And we literally have a fence line going. One side is still Rocky Top. The other side is just like probably the best grass we grow on the whole place. And so that's really, and it's not about like, it's all about like, for me, like looking, what does the ground need? Is it ready for us? Is the grass ready for us to have cows on it? Probably not. So we'll hold them back and feed them more hay. And that's just really, and just having multiple species on our property, I think is important because it, just incorporates more organic matter into the soil. I'm not like the biggest soil grass nerd. That's more my husband's department. I just make sure everybody's where they're supposed to be and move in the right way. Is a lot of what I do.
Okay. That's awesome. Do you rotate the animals separately from pasture to pasture, or do you just keep them all together?
So I'm not sure yet.
Okay.
Right now we still have cows in our winter paddock because we bought the grass isn't ready for them to go on it. So we've got the sheep are just kind of going around right now, but our chickens are in chicken tractors or turkey tractors, and they are kept separate from the cattle. But generally, I think we're just going to have everybody separately and moving a couple days, behind everybody is probably what we'll do. The good thing about multi-species grazing is there's some things, and I'm not an expert on this, there's some worms that if a cow picks them up, they become terminal. So it's good to have multiple species because some of the worms and parasites don't cross over. So if we wanted to put them together, it wouldn't be a huge deal, but it's also not problematic to have them going behind each other, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I was looking into that on our 2.5 acres. That my vision in California was to have like a Dexter and then something to like, we could have broken it up into like 3 different small paddocks, basically.
Yeah.
But that I had learned about that. We had goats. So I was thinking about moving the goats, you know, and having it like that. But I did learn a little bit about that. I would love to learn more about what each species contributes and what each species can bring negatively to that area too, because you know, for the one that's coming after it.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a fascinating topic for me. This is like the stuff that we talk about in Clubhouse. Right?
It is. I mean, you talk about like how you're not like a brand ambassador, but I was literally just on Clubhouse visiting with folks before this, and for me, it's been great. The Clubhouse has been great, especially for just I've learned so much from other people, because like other people do things differently in other parts of the country, and I'm definitely a novice, especially when it comes to cattle and sheep. So like I ask questions all the time and I get great answers generally.
Yeah. It has been great. I wish I had more time for it. That's my issue. It's still there, everyone. If Clubhouse is still there, I still have a club. Now they're called houses, right? Or something. So I still have that. I just haven't had the time to invest in it. So I was in one of Lacey's rooms the other day, just the goal room that she has. I was in there just listening. It's fun to hear everybody's voices. So I'll try to pop in. Yeah. So what are the benefits of having a large scale homestead like yours? First, tell us exactly, like list all the animals again.
Okay.
We want to hear them all. And like if you have gardens and how big and that sort of thing.
Okay. I'll go from biggest to smallest. So we have, because I forgot stuff. So we have cattle and we have about 7 of them. Usually we butcher 1 or 2 a year and we sell shares of them or cuts. We're in a farmer's market nearby. We have pigs. We only have 4 right now. We keep 1 for ourselves and Pam and Ed, and then the rest we sell direct to consumer. We have meat birds. Generally, we do 1 or 2 rounds of those a year. We have 3 laying hens. Most of my family is actually allergic to eggs, so they're more or less like yard ornaments that clean up ticks and bugs and snakes for us. We did meat ducks this year, and then we have my son's project is quail. So I think that covers everything we have right now. We have the sheep, and so we'll have 2 lambs go to butcher this winter. 1 for us, and 1 we'll probably put into our cooler at the farmer's market. And that's I think that covers everything. We do quails for meat and eggs, because like I mentioned, most of our family is allergic to chicken eggs. And then I have a huge garden that is, I don't know, it's not huge in perspective. It's probably 50 by 25. So we've got that big garden and we've got all sorts of things in there.
Okay. Yeah, that's a lot going on. How many quail? I had Jasmine on here also to talk about quail. So.
We started with 30. We harvested half, so maybe we have 20. Right, we have 20 females and 2 males right now. And that's my son's 4-H project. It's been really cool to see him take over. And also, I need to preface this. It has taken us a long time to get here, and I also have bigger kids now because when we started, I had a newborn and like a toddler. So I have an 11-year-old and a 7-year-old. My 11-year-old is like a straight up ranch hand. He has a lot of responsibility. So that's one of the reasons why like we're able to have all these animals is the quail's his whole deal. He puts the sheep up every night. So I have to shout out my oldest kid because like, and also like, I don't know, we see a lot of people on Instagram and be like, oh, well, they have all this stuff and they have this huge homestead. And like, this has been 10 years in the making and like a lot of failure. So like be gentle with yourself, especially when you're starting out. Like you will get your milk cow one day. I still don't have my milk cow. Like you'll get her one day. Like it's a journey and it's a process and like be gentle with yourself because you will have failures even later on. Like after you're like, I should know better. Like you'll mess up.
Yeah. You'll still lose your chickens to predators. You'll still have sick chickens or sick animals.
Yeah.
And just, you're so right.
You'll have bad sheep moms and that'll
Mm-hmm.
like lose their babies, you know, things happen. And you just have to learn from it, seek mentorship,
Mm-hmm.
and get better.
Yeah.
The biggest benefits are having food, being able to provide food for our community. I know not everybody's goal is to sell stuff from their homestead. We are a business, and I run our homestead as a business. Even if we were just creating food or growing food for ourselves, I would still run it as a business. Clubhouse friend Richard from Hat Creek Ranch in Texas, he says you're either a homesteader or you're a pilgrim. And if you're a pilgrim, you're just like doing things to say, I grew this chicken, but you've spent so much money growing that chicken. Like, I'll do Red Rangers versus Cornish crosses as an example.
Mm-hmm.
We grow Cornish crosses because feed to meat conversion works best for us. Like, I just want chicken. I don't care if it's a heritage breed chicken. But lots of people like to grow Red Rangers, but they take 12 weeks to grow out. Rather than like a Cornish cross, which takes 6 weeks to me. For me, that's a no-brainer because like I'm putting less feed into an animal for a shorter period of time and getting the same return. So like you have to be for me, I have to be in a business mindset when I'm homesteading. Like, does this make sense? Financially, time, labor wise. And so I think like that's my biggest suggestion is like, run the numbers. Like, don't just spend money to spend money. Like, does this make sense for you to do it this way?
Right. And if you are making those choices, at least you know why. You're not just blindly getting into that. Yeah, that totally makes sense. Hey there, homestead dreamer. Whether you're just starting out or have already dipped your toes into the homesteading world, I've got something special for you. It's all about setting up a solid foundation for your homestead plan and income strategy through thoughtful action and implementation. Because let's face it, starting a homestead is not too difficult, but keeping it sustainable can be a real challenge. Now, the decisions you make in those early years can truly make or break your experience. You either end up feeling confident and content, or you find yourself caught up in a never-ending struggle, like on a hamster wheel. And we definitely want to avoid that. That's exactly why I've created an amazing resource for you, the Workshop for Beginner Homesteaders and Dreamers. With this tool, you will have a rock-solid foundation to build your homesteading dream upon. In the pre-recorded workshop, you'll dive into some valuable topics such as strategies for planning, savings, and generating an income, how to find and become a part of a supportive homesteading community, and developing the right mindset for homesteading success. And here's the cherry on top. Throughout the month of June, I'm offering my workshop for beginner homesteaders and dreamers at a special discount price. It's an hour and 40-minute video where I personally guide you through most of the Homesteading for Beginners workbook, which is included in the workshop price, by the way. To grab this offer, head over to healthyhomesteading.com/workshop and use the code podcast at checkout. With this code, you'll get over 20% off the already low regular price. But remember, this discount is only available during the month of June, so make sure you take action soon. You can find all necessary links in the show notes of this podcast episode as well. I'm eager for you to get started. Let's make your homesteading dreams come true together.